Hello, and welcome to Open Line. I'm Starlene Stringer. Well, according to the Violence Policy Center, Texas ranks as the 10th worst state in the nation for domestic violence. That's an alarming statistic. But there are resources in the community to help anyone affected by family or intimate partner violence. Joining me for this edition of the show are Heather Koval with the Irving Family Advocacy Center, Isabel Camacho with Brighter Tomorrows, and Mona Kafil with the Texas Muslim Women Foundation. Thank y'all so much for being here.
Thank you for
having me.
You're welcome. I wish there were no need to have y'all here, but of course there is great need and we need to do something about it. So in today's show, we'll learn about resources available to anyone in the community who is affected by domestic violence. And our big message for all is there is help and there is hope. Well, 1 in 3 women and 1 in 4 men will experience a violent partner at some point in their life. And there's evidence that the pandemic has really accelerated the problem. Well, I'd like to ask each of you what this year has been like for the people you serve. And Heather, let's start with you.
Thank you, Starlene. Domestic violence situations are always challenging situations. There's no easy options or easy resources for victims. A lot of times, in order to get safe, they may have to leave everything that they know in order to get to a safe environment. And really, we saw during this pandemic that victims were scared to stay and they were so scared to leave. They're already scared to leave, but especially with COVID and the pandemic and everything going on, they were fearful to leave their home and get exposed to the virus. So specifically to these last couple of months, we really saw that issue for our clients presenting itself and trying to figure out what are going to be our options to help victims be safe and stay safe if they don't feel comfortable going to a shelter or to a family member's house or those kinds of things. So that was definitely an additional challenge. It continues to be a challenge in our current situation.
I'm glad you brought that up because a lot of people watching may not have even considered that. They think, oh, they're going to get out, but instead they're facing another challenge. So thank you for that, Heather. And now, Isabel, what about Brighter Tomorrows?
Just an echoing what Ms. Heather is stating, it has been a challenge not just for the clients, but also for the programs in keeping the programs open. Brighter Tomorrows have provided immediate training to the staff to see how we will be able to keep the staff safe and then also clients safe, and being able to provide the resources that are vital for clients, especially those who are fleeing domestic violence, who are at risk of losing their life. Now they're encountering a new issue, which is or a new challenge, which is the pandemic. Keeping clients safe has always been one of the priorities for Brighter Tomorrows, as well as keeping staff safe, so we will be able to continue providing those vital services for them. We were able to move to telehealth immediately, able to provide virtual services to clients, also able to keep the shelter open, being able to provide the right training to staff so the shelter can be a safe place for them and for the clients. And then also, one of the most important things is that the community do a step out. Although the different services, different agencies in the community, different platforms, services providers, the service industry, clients losing their jobs or having reduced on hours. It was a financial challenge for both the clients and the agencies. But I think that the most important thing is that we have a community response that stood up very quickly, being able to provide resources out there so we have the right tools to continue with this services that are as I said before, vital for our clients.
That's definitely good news that you have new sources and more sources or resources that you can go to. Mona, do you find the same correlation within the Muslim community?
Absolutely. I think I would echo what Heather and Isabel are talking about. We are facing exact same number. It had decreased around April and March because, again, I think the difference between the client staying at home with the abuser was something that they were not even able to call us or 911. So that really our numbers dropped around those months. But July onwards, they have steadily increased. And we have our shelters open. And in order to do the quarantining, what we have done is we are providing hotel nights. So each time when somebody who's coming into our shelter, we give them hotel nights to begin with. So at least they have some quarantine. We make sure that they have their temperatures checked and make sure that they are safe, and then move them into our shelter. So I think we've made 2-step process, 3-step process. However, I think adding to the layer that Heather and Isabel are talking about, the language barrier is definitely what we see. Clients are facing domestic violence. They have to now translate and understand the onslaught of COVID literature that comes to them, going through them. So we have seen increased need of counseling. We have seen increased need of language translation a lot with our clients.
Wow. Okay. So Mona, the Texas Muslim Women Foundation is the first agency in the nation to provide culturally sensitive service in the Muslim community. So while I have you right now talking to you, I want to ask you another question. Can you tell us more about the foundation's overall mission?
Absolutely. And I'll tell you, the mission is to empower and promote through social services and other programs as well. Keep in mind that this is not only for Muslim women. This is open to everyone, because domestic violence does not see faith, does not see culture. It is beyond all of this. And the reason why it is Texas and Muslim, because the founders wanted something similar to Catholic charities, something similar to Jewish family services. So that is the reason why they wanted Muslim woman name there. However, our services are open to everyone. We do not discriminate.
Wonderful. That's definitely good news. And I want to come to you now, Isabel. For viewers who might already be familiar or might not already be familiar with it, can you tell us all about Brighter Tomorrow's mission?
Yeah, so our mission is to empower victims affected by domestic violence and sexual assault with services. We strongly believe that every individual deserves to have a safe, and then home should be the safest place for anyone, where they can grow, where they can reach the stars, where they will be able to accomplish their goals, their individual goals, and then also their family goals. So our safety is always priority. Housing stability is always a priority. After the client is moving into the shelter program, we would like to make sure that we are offering supporting services so clients will be able to attain home housing, and then also being able to keep that housing after the program step out.
Interesting.
We do provide services, not just shelter, counseling, but also education in the community. We do have an educational department that goes into the schools, have a curriculum with them. They also go into hospitals and other members in the community, police stations, to provide information about what domestic violence is, what sexual assault is, but also what resources are available. And the most important thing, what a healthy relationship is, how it looks like, what it is, how we will be able as a community to build stronger and safe communities for all of us. Because domestic violence not just affect the victim who is in the relationship, but indirectly also affect the community's mental health as well. The other services is counseling services for families who are still with either in their own home or with the person that is causing the abuse, helping children also with counseling services as well, and in the children program. I think that one of the most important thing is that we are here in case someone is needing services. If you are unsure if you're a victim of domestic violence or not, or a family member is suffering from this another pandemic, which is the domestic violence, to please reach out to any of the organizations that are here, including Brighter Tomorrow's, at their hotline, and we will be able to answer your questions, guide you through, and then walk the journey with you.
Wonderful. Another great organization doing good things to help people here in the community in their time of need. And Heather, I want to come to you next, because many in the community know about the great work the Family Advocacy Center is doing, but please take a moment to tell us about your mission.
So our Family Advocacy Center is a coordinated community response to violent crime in the city of Irving. So we've got multiple agencies on site to address and the multifaceted nature of violent crime. We know that when domestic violence occurs or any other violent crime, it doesn't just affect one person. It has a ripple effect. It affects children. It affects family members. It affects employers. It affects medical. There's so many impacted individuals and organizations when violent crime occurs. And so we wanted to ensure that when a victim is overwhelmed or encountering a situation and they don't know what to do next, that we've got as much here as possible, that they can come to one location and start the process to hope and healing. And so we provide, our victim services unit provides direct services to any victim of violent crime, can assist them with crime victims compensation, getting them referred to agencies like Texas Muslim Women's Foundation or Brighter Tomorrows, agencies that they may not know about and that provide services that we can't provide. So we want to make sure to connect them with the right resources to meet their needs. We have investigators on site that can take reports. We know that the majority of victims don't report domestic violence. And so being able to explain the criminal justice process and talk about that option and having a detective available to take that report is such a great option. And for victims coming in who've already made a police report, they're able to meet with their detective and a victim services person all at the same time and get all of that stuff going at once. We also know that children are often impacted by domestic violence. So we do have Child Protective Services. Their investigative unit is housed here in our building. We have a forensic interviewer that's available to do forensic interviews on child abuse investigations. And we've got a full counseling center that provides individual counseling, couples counseling, family therapy. And so this is available for individuals that recognize that there's something unhealthy going on in their family. Maybe it hasn't escalated to a violent situation yet, but they want to seek out help. We're available for counseling for that. And then we also do provide counseling for individuals when violence has occurred. So we certainly want to work on a preventive level as much as we can through that counseling option. But we also understand that sometimes people don't come to services until after something has occurred. So couples counseling is not available when we've had a violent incident or we have safety concerns, but it may be available in other situations or other types of instances for families. So the last thing that we have available here is we do have a protective order advocate that typically offices here. With COVID. They're not in the office right now, but we are continuing to do protective order screenings and send those directly to the district attorney's office. So if a victim wants to do a protective order, we're able to get that screening done and sent right over to them for intake. So that's a great option for victims who are considering a protective order as a part of their personal safety plan.
Yeah, so you guys are all working together to make a huge difference, and you're doing a lot of work in the community. And I love that all these organizations are assisting each other and doing that to keep people safe. And Heather, you mentioned a lot about physical violence. And when most people do hear of domestic violence, they think of physical violence, but that's only part of the picture. So Isabel, what should people know about the reality?
I think that it is important to see that domestic violence is, even though that across the board it looks similar on victim cases, the reality is that each case is individual, and then we needed to address and assess the case individually. It is important for us to have, yes, a safety planning for them, and then in different areas of the safety planning, the physical safety, emotional safety, financial safety, which is another big impact that we have on clients suffering from domestic violence and sexual assault, is the high big impact that they have on their finances due to the financial abuse that they are suffering. And it is important for us to have the understanding that not all cases with domestic violence have physical assault. Not all cases with domestic violence will have a verbal assault. Clients sometimes have the emotional abuse, which is as big and as important to take in consideration for the mental health of the clients, and then the children. Understanding that even though that sometimes the couple keeps domestic violence, or try to keep domestic violence just behind doors, that the children knows, and then they have the perception that something is growing and something is going on at the home. I think that it is important for us to also expand the safety planning after the schools closed due to the pandemic. there was low reporting on abuse towards children. However, we knew that things were happening at home. We were able, little by little, in providing those services to the community so they can break the cycle, understand that domestic violence is more than just physical. I think it is important and continue to be important.
Definitely important to point that out. And Heather, what would you like to add to that description that Isabel just gave?
So, certainly it's important for people to recognize what all is involved in that. Name calling, put down, threats, manipulation, using the children against the victim, threats, if you leave me, nobody's going to want you, you're worthless. All of these kinds of things are really damaging to a victim. And many of the victims I talk to, it's more damaging than the physical injuries. I've talked to many victims who say, the bruises heal, the scratches go away, but those words play like a tape recorder in my mind. And so understanding that verbal abuse, that emotional abuse, typically that stuff continues and escalates over time. And so, I hate when a victim tells me it's only verbal, because there should be no only in that sentence. Verbal abuse is domestic violence. And so recognizing that that is serious and that is something that we need to be aware of and working towards. I think Isabel mentioned the financial abuse, controlling access to funds. That's been a huge issue during the pandemic for victims to be able to leave or access help. So controlling finances, controlling access to the money, that's a big deal as well. And also controlling access to the children. So all of those factors we need to, put on an equal playing field, because those things are not, verbal and emotional abuse is not less than physical violence.
Wow, it's all just heartbreaking. And Mona, I have to ask you, are there any differences when you define the term from a cultural perspective?
Absolutely. And I think I would also add spiritual abuse. And these days, immigration. A lot of women are not given their immigration status that is held against them. And a lot of time, ICE has been called on these ladies because these ladies, the abusers or perpetrator was holding their paperwork. So immigration is a real threat. A lot of women were not coming out and reporting, or even coming out calling 911 because of that fear that after this, I would be, either gone into ICE situation or even deportation. So immigration was a main threat. And then spiritual. I think we all have to realize that, a lot of abuser will hold either you're too religious or you're not religious enough. It doesn't matter what faith you're practicing, but this is held by the abuser a lot of times, and that is an abuse. It doesn't matter which faith. And when we talk about culture, the culture plays an important role. And I think we realized in 2012 that the healing has to begin where culture has to meet that with the client, with the survivor. So we became a trauma-informed services, which meant that we understood where it's not just one trauma of domestic violence where the client has gone through. Let's talk about women who've gone through immigration or who've left their country. They've gone through one trauma. Domestic violence is adding another trauma. So we have to not only heal one trauma of domestic violence, we have to find a way to also through counseling, through many other ways, handle different kinds of trauma. So we became a trauma-informed agency, which we continue to build on. And I think based off that, we have almost 15 plus languages spoken at TMWF, because language is one of the first one when you talk about healing. A lot of women can only speak their language, and the healing can only begin through that language. Language, food, those are basic human needs. So trauma-informed services for us has been a very culturally focused and culturally oriented services that we provide.
Wow, when you talk about the different types of trauma and what they go through and the barriers, it again is just heartbreaking to hear, but it's the reality for so many. So we're glad these organizations are there to help out. Isabel, I want to come to you and talk about another type, and that's sexual violence. How frequently is sexual violence an element of the problem?
I would like to say that probably about 75% of the victims who are suffering the trauma of domestic violence are also reporting sexual assault. But we also have the other part of sexual assault, which is the sexual assault in the community, something that is happening either through a stranger or another incident. I think that Mona did mention something very, very important, is that when we face a case, we also facing multi-trauma, and then that's also facing the impact of how the lack of resources is impacting these families, either they are at home at risk of homelessness, or are actually facing homelessness, and then some of the times facing homelessness due to domestic violence that is happening at home. I think that when we talk to victims affected by either domestic violence or sexual assault and sexual assault, we're talking about the multi-trauma that they are suffering. I think that it's important for us to understand that it starts with the client. Where the client is at, that's where we needed to start the journey with them.
Wow. Okay. Thank you for breaking that down and explaining it to us, because a lot of people are wondering, how it's changed or how it's impacted. And there's some other information that's interesting too. The National Domestic Violence Hotline released their annual impact report last June, and they noted an increase of 39% in contacts, 48% increase in website visits, and a 147% increase in people reaching out for help via online chat. So Heather, how do you think the pandemic has affected these statistics?
Well, I definitely think that a lot of victims, typically during the day, we get calls from clients to ask questions, to find out their options and their resources. And we certainly saw that decrease during the day, because a lot of us felt that it was most likely because the children are at home right now and the abuser's at home right now, working from home. So how else are they going to access services other than going online and doing searches and finding things online, sending emails, asking questions in those kinds of ways? So certainly, I think it limited victims' ability to make phone calls and to reach out for help. And so having those online resources is awesome. We've got culture coming up that are used to texting and chatting and looking things up online, and that's normal and easy for them. So having those options so that they can access the information is wonderful. And if that's how they get the information, as long as it's getting into their hands and we're able to help them be safe through online resources, then that's an awesome option for victims.
For sure. And Isabel, I want to come back to you, because I want to ask if you think the statistics reflect more incidents of abuse or more victims reaching out. I mean, are there other factors that are reflected in those numbers?
One of the things that we noticed at the beginning of the pandemic during the months of March, April, and May is that reduction on calls, but also the increase on the level of crisis services for the people who were reaching us. So it was more intense. It was more times during the week, during the day. It was the intensity of these cases just triple. I think that one of the other things is that we're talking about also a generation that is more comfortable with the social media, is more comfortable with the virtual settings, but we also have the community in this. The community who is responding to these platforms is also community who are younger than 50 years old. So we needed to think about our elderly. How are we going to be able to reach at them? How are we going to be able to provide services to the ones who don't have access to these platforms? So I think that it's the idea is to make the program so flexible that we are able to provide those services to anybody in the community with the limited resources that they have. We also have families who were probably sharing just one phone or probably sharing just one computer, being able to train them on how technology can also be an impact. Mona was speaking before about how we needed to be like multicultural. It also includes the technology use, how technology cannot be used against them, and then how we can prevent for a new incident to happen due to the use of either reaching out, due to the use of this accessing these platforms, being able to raise the history of whenever you were searching for services. So I think that is a lot of education that has been out in the community, being able to use platforms, social media platforms such as Facebook and then YouTube, because I think that when you train one person, you will be able to expand your resources. It will be, oh, I hear this, or I look at this, or maybe you can look at services this way. Maybe you can talk to that friend or to that doctor or to that nurse to be able to connect you with services at the office. And as I said before, making sure that whenever we are providing services, that both clients and the staff are also safe.
That definitely makes sense. Thank you. And Mona, I want to come to you and ask you, has the Texas Muslim Women's Foundation seen an increase since the onset of the pandemic?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think along with all the other agencies, we definitely had a lower number around March and April and almost in June. But July onwards, the numbers have increased beyond our comprehension. Like I said, our 2 shelters have been to the capacity and we've added hotel nights. That's having said that, I think I would also like to add, when the abuser and the survivor is in the same home with children, and either one person or both of them have lost their job, one of the first things that they will cut is going to be their medication. And we have seen a rise of people with ADHD or schizophrenia or additional mental health stop taking medications. And that has abusers have gone further, down the road on that. And even some of the survivors, antidepressant medication. So that has gone down a lot.
Oh,
and
wow.
We have had an increased mental health issues. And second to that, adding to what Isabel said, that we have added, so when abuser and the whole family is in the house and there is no escape, a lot of these clients they have not been given a normal phone line. So like you're saying, one family has come up with only one cell phone. These ladies have no way to reach any phone number. And we have been contacted via different Wi-Fi apps, and WhatsApp is one of the common ones. It's an app where you only need a Wi-Fi, and you can have any kind of phone or even a laptop or a computer that you can contact. So we have moved our hotline to WhatsApp as well to give these ladies added benefit. If they do not have phone line, then they can call through WhatsApp. So this is, and we had to think literally on the spot to add that kind of preferences for these people.
New things, yes.
New things. We have to pivot, right?
Exactly. A lot of pivoting in 2020. And I know a lot of you had some great things planned fundraising wise that were put off because of the pandemic. And so we encourage our viewers to go to your websites and learn how they can help you out financially. Thank you all so much for being here to shine a light on domestic violence and show how we can all help make a difference.
Thank you for
inviting us.
You're welcome. And thank you for watching. I'm Starlene Stringer. Please be sure to join us on Thursday, December 10th for our next edition of Open Line. We'll see you then.